Hi world, welcome back to Emo Talk Show. It is your host, Tulia Mlimba. Today we are talking to some beautiful ladies about one of the biggest issues that I've seen in the past 10 years in the African community. And this is the pressure to get married. Are African people just pressurized to go into marriage? This is the discussion we'll be having. But before we get into that, I'm gonna have the ladies introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for having me, Tulia. Hello, everyone. My name is Pandi Lumet. I am from Liberia and Sierra Leone, and I currently work within higher education.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anastasia, and I'm from Tanzania, but that's kind of like a very iffy question to ask me, so I'm from everywhere in Africa, basically. Well, I just graduated college, and currently my passion is politics and human rights and law, and I'll be going to Colombia this coming semester during the fall.
Nice. All right. So the very first question is, are African people pressurized to get into marriage? Let's talk about that. And yeah, just take it away.
Yes.
How so?
African women specifically are pressured to get married from very early on, right? From the way you're groomed to be a wife, the types of advice you're given. My mother had all girls, and one of the biggest pieces of praise we would get when we were younger is we graduated high school without getting pregnant. Like, a lot of everything they tell you is they're trying to protect you from getting spoiled, right? And getting spoiled is pretty much being a woman who isn't right for marriage, a woman who has explored a little bit, a woman who has maybe had a child, out of wedlock. Like, they tried so hard to protect us from being someone who would not be
Seen unfit for marriage.
Thank you. Unfit for marriage. They're trying to protect you from being a spoiled young girl and a spoiled young woman. So it's like a lot of our grooming that's happened is for the purpose of marriage and being a man's somebody one day.
Yeah, I definitely agree that for a lot of us, we're pressured to see marriage as an accomplishment, as the end goal in our lives. Not necessarily just another part of our life,
our journey.
Exactly. It's just the complete. You will see, like, I know you were going to mention it later about the African movies, but you will see in a lot of African films where marriage is the destination for a lot of us. And as she was mentioning, like, we are groomed from a very young age, particularly us women, like, we're groomed from a very young age to be wives, to learn about how to take care of the household, to learn about how to take care of children. And the expectation is that when we grow up, we are going to do those things because we have been groomed into it. The expectation is that once we reach a certain age, we're going to be able to be the women essentially we're going to be the women
of mothers.
Exactly.
Right, that's what it is.
However, like, what I really find weird about this expectation about us, the expectation of us getting married at a certain point, is that men do not have that same they're not expected to be married, or you don't see a man like a young boy who reaches like 18, 19, 20. Like, I consider anybody who's like in their 20s to be still young. But when they reach that age, they're not being pressured by their families, their uncles, their freaking uncles. Sorry.
You got it.
To be married. And it's weird that those same individuals that are not pressuring their sons to be married
Husbands.
or to even be marriageable are pressuring the young ladies to be married or to be in a place where they are deemed to be marriageable, where they can be married.
Okay, so then I guess from what you guys are saying, this is like, these are the expectations, this is the grooming, but where does that come from? Like, why are they doing that? When they do that, when they're preparing you for marriage, like, what's the ultimate goal? I asked a couple people, like we did a survey online, and someone said such a clever thing, and I want to read it out to you guys. This person said that marriage is seen as a rite of passage. Marriage is considered the key to continuity of the family and community bloodline, especially because the main goal of marriage is having children. What do you guys have to say about that?
I do agree on the rite of passage, but I do not agree on the continuity of bloodline, because I don't think parents really think that deep into it. Their intentions is that you have been in my hands for this period of time, and now you're gonna be in somebody else's hands.
But what do you say to the parents who are like, when are you bringing me a grandchild now? Like, you know?
But even if they say like, oh, when are you going to give me like a grandchild? They're not thinking like, oh, our bloodline is going to continue. It's not going to end. If you see these parents, they have like grandchildren my mom.
That's
my
true.
mom has like.
True. Tell my mom, how many grandkids do you want? Where are you gonna put them?
Right.
The house isn't big enough. Where are you gonna put them?
You can barely even name all of them, and you want your small child to give you more grandkids. That's just, it's too high of an expectation for the women. But I think like the reason why they say, when are you going to give me like grandchildren, is because that's the expectation, is that if they're instilling that inside of you, then you know like you can't do it in wedlock, because you're just gonna bring shame to yourself and shame to the family. So they're saying like, when are you going to give me grandchildren, as a way of like, think about marriage.
My friend, when is the bride price coming?
When is it coming?
We need somebody to knock on our door.
Yes.
Okay,
Exactly.
okay. But I think that like for the male children, I don't know, like the patriarchy and everything, that for the male kid, when parents are asking, they are thinking about the bloodline. Because like in my culture, the kids that come from me, my family only sees them as, this is their uncle's side of the family. Whereas like my husband's side of the family, that's his people. You know, so like they are thinking of the bloodline in the sense of like, we need to continue, our legacy needs to continue, our name needs to stay on this land. Like we can not all extinct, like we have to continue living. So I kind of agree that they are thinking of like the continuation of not just the bloodline, but the culture, you know? And that's why like, I think there's also a big pressure in like who you marry, right? Marry somebody from your tribe, because then they can speak your language. They have the same cultures as you. They don't want to dilute anything, right? So to that, what do you guys think? Do you feel that like a lot of African girls or men are pressured to marry within their nationality and or their tribal groups?
I think what you're talking about to me is really sounding like it all comes down to patriarchy and autonomy, or the lack thereof, right? I think a lot of these young boys, African boys, are not necessarily being raised to be husbands, to be fathers. They're not even being raised to be sons. They're being raised to be patriarchs. You know, how like you can see a household, you have a household with a bunch of kids, boys and girls, and you can see how the girls turn out and how the boys turn out. And I'm talking about a typical modern day African household, or we can even talk about the African immigrant household in the diaspora. Exactly. We see how the girls fare versus how the boys fare. And that's because at a certain age, parents stop raising their sons. They invest so much in their daughters in terms of like how they want their daughters to be nurturers. They want you to learn how to cook, to clean, to take care of people, to take care of yourself, to be self-sufficient. It may not necessarily be financially, and they may be doing it for the purpose of you know, doing that for a man one day, right? That it's for a man one day. But at the end of the day, they're still letting you go into the world with a bunch of different skills that the boys are not being taught. All they're being taught is how to, you know, how to build the patriarchy, right? So what you're talking about with the parents and the bloodline, it's, again, to me, it's still patriarchy, because it's not the mothers. Like if I was to have children right now as an African woman, they would be expected to take my husband's last name. And think about all our mothers whose histories we've lost, our grandmothers, great-great-grandmothers whose stories we don't know, because our people are more so concerned about, furthering our patriarchal lineage than they necessarily are with, and for the point you talked about with culture and wanting to preserve the culture, culture changes. Culture has always changed. Culture evolves, and we should be open to that. And I feel like there's such a huge investment in furthering patriarchy and building that, but with an illusion of this is for our culture, this is how things are supposed to be. But we're really missing huge points, and that's what skills are we teaching these boys? Where's the emotional intelligence? Are they learning that? Do they know how to truly care for a woman outside of their relationship and their proximity to the woman? Do they know how to respect their sisters as autonomous beings outside of not bringing shame to the family?
Yeah. It's a bit weird about the cultural aspect because so much of our culture has been tainted by white supremacy, and I'm not going to sit here and just say like, oh, our current culture is the way that it was pre-colonial Africa, because it obviously isn't. And for a lot of our parents to be ignorant of that fact and continuously like try to shove down, white supremacist, washed down cultures and pass it on to us and then force us to continue to pass it on to our own children. If people do decide to have children, it's kind of like detrimental, and it doesn't really sustain whatever culture that they're saying that they want to be able to sustain. Like if you're telling me, like pre-colonial Africa in a lot of societies were governed by women. There were societies that respected women as autonomous individuals, women who were able to choose and pick about what they wanted to do with their lives. And with white supremacy, with colonialism coming in, a lot of our men and a lot of our women too were pressured to accept white standards of what marriage means. So even like the definition of marriage is not one that we have given ourselves. It's one that we have been given by the colonizers, if I can just say that. And right now, when we're pressuring the kids, the young, like 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20s, anybody in their 20s, seriously, like when we're pressuring them to get married, do we even know what marriage looks like for ourselves? Because a lot of our parents are like, I think for a majority of people who might watch these programs, a lot of them are like single parents. Not a lot of these kids live in households where the mother and father live together. Two, do the households even follow the traditional?
Are they functional?
Thank you. Are they functional? But do they even follow the traditional narratives of what European standards of what marriage is supposed to look like? Because that's what they're trying to make us follow. If the man is supposed to be the breadwinner and the woman is supposed to be the person who takes care of the household, is that something that is reflected in today's society? Is that what it looks like within these?
Men making enough money to be the breadwinner.
They want you to work 40 hours and then come clean.
Yeah.
Under their feet.
And then they will say that's culture, that's how it's supposed to be. Women are supposed to be in the house doing everything. You can work 3-4 jobs and go back home, take care of your husband, take care of your 4 or 5 kids, and that's what you're supposed to do. But what is the expectation for men? What is the expectation for men? Is it that they're just, oh, you get married? Okay, let's say that there is an expectation for them to get married. But once you are married, what's the expectation for you within that marriage? Are there certain things that you're supposed to do as a husband to maintain that marriage?
Just be visible. That's it.
Yeah, and I think to that point,
yes.
I don't know if I speak for all unmarried young African women, but I feel like for me, I haven't seen the best of examples when it comes to marriage in my community to say that I'm confident enough to go into a marriage because I don't know what a good marriage looks like. I've seen it here and there but there are very few. And so like the expectations that you want me to go into a marriage, and yet your own marriage is a wreck. Like, and I just feel that like to some extent that the aunties and uncles that are pressuring people to get married are fearful or are jealous of your independence. Because you know they see you go on a trip. That's not something they did growing up, and now you have that. But they see them, they themselves are struggling in their marriages. Maybe it's abusive. Maybe it's not the best thing that has ever happened to them. But yet, those people will not tell you those bad experiences they're going through.
And most
they
of
want
them
you
were
to
forced
come
into it.
Yeah. They want you to come and get into the same trauma that they're leaving on a daily basis. So I just think it's really iffy that people want young people to get into marriages when they themselves who are in it have nothing to show for it other than children.
And imagine like being told by somebody like, oh, you have to get married at a certain age. Okay, let's say I do have to get married at a certain age.
Let's say 19.
Let's say 19. So what should I expect in that marriage? They don't, as a woman, they tell you, you don't get anything. You're supposed to give in that marriage. But what should I expect in that marriage? What did you teach your son to do?
Give me.
I'm giving him my stomach, so I'm pouring out children for him. I'm taking care of the household. You know, I might have a job or two if he's not even able to make enough money to sustain the household. But what has he been groomed to do from a very young age in order to be a marriageable person? What have you guys taught him in order for him to be a wonderful husband? Because clearly, from a very young age, I'm expected to know how to be a wife. And this starts from the household, your own household, that your parents would teach you to take care of your brother, they would teach you to take care of your father, and that's how they groom you to take care of your husband.
Random uncles that come to your house, eat, and don't wash the dishes.
And you have to leave your bedroom for them.
For them, yes. But what are you teaching your son to do? And it's like this double standard of like, the expectation is marriage. I agree. If the expectation is marriage, then there has to be like an expectation from both sides. You know, both the male and the female have to all be expected to be at a certain level in order to be marriageable. Like there has to be certain qualities that the man has to have in order for him to be marriageable. Why is it that I, as the woman, have to bear that brunt of like, have to be prepared for marriage, but the man cannot be prepared for marriage?
Yeah.
You know?
So if I've heard about you saying, you know, pouring children out into the world. Go ahead.
Comment on something you said about the aunties being jealous of, freedom. The freedom that a lot of women, African women in the now modern African women, a lot of our freedom that we have. I feel like if we really think about, for me, it's hard for me to fathom what they went through. You know, what people who, first of all, it was a different time, different generation. Our parents were probably teenagers in the 80s, maybe some 70s. I think my mom was a teenager in the 80s, 90s. My mom was definitely a teenager in the 90s. You know, I can't fathom what things were necessarily like for them. Like in America, as somebody who grew up watching American TV shows, I can kind of sort of make inferences about what life was like for a Black American woman in the 90s, right? But for African women, we don't really have a lot of media, a lot of content that lets us know what life was like for them. And a lot of our parents too are from places that were experiencing civil wars while they were teenagers and in their 20s and stuff like that. So all of that greatly impacts the amount of freedom that they had or that they could exercise. A lot of them could not, they weren't choosing who they wanted to marry or where they wanted to live. Those decisions were being made for them.
When they got married.
Exactly. So when you are groomed for something for so long, and when something is forced upon you, like I mentioned with my mother, and then you make a decision like, hey, I'm gonna run away, I'm gonna do this. Now all of a sudden they're turning back on you and telling you that, you face ridicule for it. You're being told that you're not being a woman enough, because a real woman, a woman who is mature, would stick it through, right? Home trained, would stick it through, would endure. There's so much nonsense. There's a huge expectation of endurance when it comes to African Black women. They want us to be strong, to just take it, and that shows you the true essence of a woman is enduring. Every family member I meet,
like the
especially
value in what we have and how much we have suffered, not how
every
much
family
we've
member
accomplished.
I've met, as an adult, has told me, oh, your mom has so much blessing. She has so much blessing. She's blessed. She's blessed. Why? Because she raised, daughters all by herself as a single mom, and she had a lot of adversity. For me, hearing them say my mom is a blessed woman does not necessarily feel good. All that tells me is, so you knew she was suffering. You were there. You saw. You watched. What did you do?
Nothing.
You didn't do anything. You sat there and somebody even told me, I'm not gonna lie, I never expected your mom to, turn out the way. And as a woman who raised a single mom who raised a lot of kids, a lot of people will look you in your face and tell you they did not expect your mother to do as good of a job as she did. And me, all I hear is, so you knew she was suffering. You sat there and you watched her suffer and you doubted her. And now you have audacity to stand in my face and tell me how you feel about women, because that's really what it is. That's what it is. And so it's really hard, because I'm somebody that really likes to hold my mom accountable and my aunts accountable for the ways that they fall short, the ways that they negatively impact young girls. But then I also always have to remind myself that they didn't have the luxuries that we have today. Like, we can sit and have these conversations.
Yeah.
I promise you they weren't able to do that, you know?
And the jealousy part, I can completely understand why they would be jealous. I mean, you're fleeing from war every year. You have to move. There's no stability for you. And if you lost your family during that war, obviously you're gonna have to rely on a man to help you kind of navigate these new waters that you're in. It makes me mad a little bit too, because it's what that experience was like for you. You've gone through it. And now that you are in a place, especially for parents who are here in America, now that you are in a much more settled environment, how is it that you still have these survival tactics and you want to just give them to me and be like, okay, you need to get a man? But what about my education? What about building a career? What about strengthening my relationship with my friends? Building a community so that if anything happens, I don't have to go to a man for help. I can rely on my community. I can rely on myself to uplift myself. Why is it that I must go through the same processes that you went through when we are living in different environments?
And speaking off of what you just said, we're all graduates here. I'm pretty sure that each one of us, when we graduated, or even before graduation, people are asking you, is it ring coming soon? Is it ring coming soon? And I think, Pandi, you graduated before me, right?
I don't know.
I don't even remember. But as soon as I graduated, whenever I'd go to a bridal shower, somebody would say, Tulia, is your own coming soon?
I don't even go anymore.
Is your own coming soon? And I'm just like, I will not marry before I truly know the person that I'm getting myself. This is lifetime we're speaking about. Yes. I truly, truly respect marriage. Marriage is an incredible thing. Two are better than one, this is somebody you can rely on, you can listen to, they can hear you out. So I truly, truly respect it. And I feel like marriage, people should respect it. Children who are 18 years old in the United States shouldn't be getting married. I like to think that when our parents were growing up, because of the adversity that they had to face, they had to put up more guard, right? They had to become stronger earlier on. We don't have that.
Yeah.
And so while my mom may have matured at 15, 13, I didn't mature at 13, 15.
I'm still a baby. What you mean?
At that age, I was a baby running to my mother for everything. And now you want a child who's 18 to go and get married? What do they know? The environment is different. The situation is different. We cannot let children get into marriage because they don't know what to do. Not in our generation. Our parents' generation, maybe that worked. But in this generation, it doesn't. They're kids. You know? So it's like, whenever I hear those, I'm just like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Dating right now is different from you guys courted each other. You were forced into marriage and you were told that, you know what, you're going to like each other. Love comes. You know, you'll learn to love each other. You know, and like Pandi had said earlier on, the movies don't help. You know, when you go to Netflix, the first African movie that you see,
It's something about marriage.
it's something about marriage.
It's never about the women living out their lives, you know, having like great time with their friends, or womanhood, what it's like, or even girlhood. That experience in itself, they don't give us that moment to be able to see the little girls, the young ladies, the women, like be able to be individuals outside of what society deems to be like acceptable. And what's acceptable is that once you hit a certain age, you're supposed to be married, you're supposed to be preparing yourself to get into a lifetime with someone. I need to see more movies of women like actually living their lives.
And more about the whole thing of like, I don't know about where you guys come from, but where I come from, women can never leave their mother's house unless they are being transferred over to their husband's house.
So are women to another person?
There goes my question.
We don't own ourselves.
Are women seen as a commodity? Like, are we a transaction, a property to be passed over from one owner to another?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, I 100%. Like, for instance, right, the bride price has such a long history, the payment of a dowry. It has such a long history, and it's very different based on where you are. There are places like, for instance, in India, you know, it's the woman's family that pays, you know. In a lot of African countries, it's the male's family that pays. And then for Muslim people specifically, you know, it comes out of a history of it being treated somewhat like as a little bit of like insurance for like the woman's family, a little bit. I don't really know too much of the history, so I don't want to be wrong. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. So bride price has a very extensive history. So for me, as somebody who identifies as a feminist, you know, I'm not necessarily interested in the conversation of should we get rid of bride price, because I feel like to each his own. If you want to do it, if you want to collect it, collect it. If you don't want to, don't. For me, again, I'm more interested in the conversation of autonomy and women having the agency, right? So if a woman's family is receiving bride price, is it on that woman's terms? Is she a part of that conversation? Does she get to make the big decisions?
I tell you, it's a family matter.
Exactly,
it's not
a family matter, and the woman
mata.
never sees that money. She never touches it. She's not a part of the conversation. For me, it's not really about the woman getting all the money. It's really about her having the say. You know, her having the say, her having the power in those situations. Something. Because she's the one entering the marriage. Bride price, there would be no bride price if a woman was not entering another family. But so it really comes down to the whole autonomy thing and agency. And then when we even talk about the Netflix shows and there not being enough movies and shows about women just living their lives outside of pursuing marriage or pursuing a man, I really think it's a patriarchy problem. Because even men, like, thinking about specifically African movies, even the men, watch any African movie about some young boys, it's usually about them trying to find a way to get money. Or a woman. You know, it's money. It's like a way to prove themselves through money, financially, like, you know? So with women, it's you're finding a man. With man, is you're trying to become a patriarch. You're trying to get money so you can provide. It's the same thing. It's like we're both men are being punished, women are being punished by patriarchy because it's a system that expects everyone to have a certain role. As a man, you being a good father is irrelevant. You being a good son is irrelevant. Are you going to provide one day? You know, that's all that matters. And so it's really a patriarchy problem, and it takes agency away from the men and the women But me, I don't believe in caping for African men anymore, so.
I don't know if it takes away like agency away from the men. I feel like the bride price, the concept of like the bride price actually gives them
Well,
immense.
not bride price, just like the different expectations.
Oh, the different expectations, yes.
The bride price, definitely no.
Yeah.
No,
Like for me, I think like bride prices give like men immense power that it doesn't give women. While we're raised
away.
Yeah.
Our power.
Yeah. While we're like raised and groomed to be wives, it is the men who determine what type of woman is marriageable or like what kind of characteristics are expected from that woman in order for her to be deemed marriageable. And when they have those kind of conversations with the parents, like, oh, this is how much I want for my daughter, like they don't really, the woman is not there to say, okay, so I also want this because I have these certain qualities. It's the men and their family who are there like, okay, can your daughter cook? Is she, does she have a good womb? Can she do X, Y, and Z? This and this. And what's really weird is like the mothers of the women never ask, okay, so your son, I know he can pay for this, but what about after this? What's gonna happen? Are there things that he's gonna be able to do for my daughter? And once the woman enters the marriage, the men almost and always will hold the bride price against the woman.
That's what I was thinking.
And it's always used as a reason to...
Even the in-laws will tell you, you are 20K.
We paid for
They'll throw it in your face every
We
chance they
paid
get.
for you.
We paid for you.
We paid for you. It's like you go from being a form of labor to your parents, and then you go into being another source of labor for your husband's household. And not only
My fingers are
that,
hurting, please.
Yeah, sorry, it's okay. Not only that, like your reproductive rights are taken away and essentially given to your in-laws.
You're serving. Give it.
You are literally a breeding machine for your family in-laws, because then they're gaining another source of labor from your children. So your parents, while they might say like, oh, this is because we raised our kid, it's because they're losing that labor. It's not because they did anything wonderful. It's not because they did anything, outstanding that requires them to get that form of like, thank you. It's I'm losing labor and you're gaining. On top of that, you're going to get my grandchildren as a form of labor for your household. So I need a guarantee that I'm not losing in this. So I do agree, like the woman is literally a transaction. We're just a product being sold from one household to another. And once we get there, like if we choose to leave that situation, the men can go back to your mother and be like, oh, that product is malfunctioning. It's not working. Just like we could go to Walmart and return a freaking, let's say my phone. Like, let's pretend that I bought it from Walmart. If my phone is not working, I can go to Walmart and be like, I need my money back. It's not working. That's the same way that men can go back to their in-laws and be like, I want my money back. Your daughter is not doing this and this and this. And imagine, oh, that's the one that I was about to touch. And imagine if you're not capable of giving birth. Oh, oh my God.
Oh man, this has been so great. I'm about to start wrapping up, but I think to what you said, it's just, oh, you said so many good things. So many good things. But I also think that like the whole thing of like the transaction, right? To me, it's demeaning to women. It's very demeaning that I would be told, like, this is how much, this is the price that we're putting on your head. This is the tag that you get, And our parents like to say, oh, it's appreciation. It's not appreciation. When we have teachers' appreciation at school, I don't hear any teachers saying that, oh, my students, everybody's bringing $20 to appreciate me. $20 to appreciate the work that I do on a daily basis. It's not appreciation. Let's stop lying. Maybe pre-colonialism, it was appreciation. Nowadays, it's a command. And parents are commanding, this is how much my child is going to get paid. Now, as I wrap up, I want you guys to say one thing you'd like to save a soul today. What is something that you'd like to say to a young girl who's being pressured to get married? I have mentees, male mentees, who are being pressured to get married at age 20, 21. What do you have to say to them?
You wanna go first?
I'll let you go first. There's so much. I'm like, where do we even start? You know?
I guess like I would say that first is don't let this be something that, like, the expectation to get married, don't let it be something that forces you to do something that you do not want to do. If marriage is not something that you are ready for, if marriage is not something that you want to get into, take your sweet time, plan it out, make sure that you date. The reason why there's this dating culture, I really think it's great. It gives us an immense power because we're able to kind of like, we're able to learn about the characteristics of the type of men that we want in our lives or the type of women that we want in our lives. So being able to say, you do not meet my standards, you do not meet my expectations, and saying, you're not for me. Not letting your parents say, oh, you know what? John de Kumana Nukuri, he's really a good boy. You should marry him. Don't let your parents like force
determine
you to
that for you.
Exactly.
Because it's you getting into the marriage.
Exactly. And also, don't listen to your aunties who are.
Don't
listen to your aunties whose husbands are in your friends' inboxes. Please don't listen to them. Please don't listen to them.
Go ahead, Pandi. What do you have to tell our
Great way to
youngsters out there?
I think what I have to say is that, you know, life is about relationships and growth, you know, growing into relationships, growing out of relationships. It's all about growth. Your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your loved ones, sisters, cousins, whoever. I think it's really about making sure that you water the relationships that serve you. If you feel like something serves you and you really feel human and you feel alive within a specific relationship, whether it's romantic or platonic, go ahead and water that one. If you're starting to feel drained, if you're questioning yourself, vacate. Remove yourself, you know, run away, do what you need to do to protect yourself. And then marriage is not an accomplishment. I personally do not view marriage as an accomplishment. I view a union between two people as an accomplishment. You know, I view a romantic relationship where both people respect each other's boundaries and they love each other and they're, you know, there for each other. That is an accomplishment. Their union is an accomplishment. A union between two friends that have always been there for each other, two cousins, that's an accomplishment. But marriage, whether it's the certificate or whether it's the title, that's not an accomplishment because we know that based on our conversation that we've had today, the idea of marriage was born out of something, whether it was colonial standards, whether it's the patriarchy. Marriage is not something that women conceptualized. You know, we didn't come up with it. We didn't make up the rules for marriage. So it's not something that we should take and put on top of our heads. I know our mothers have done it. They treat marriage as this thing, the end all be all. We're not them. Please, we have small freedom now. We can speak, we can, you know, we can stretch a little bit without hitting somebody else. Yeah. So
and love on our
marriage
friends.
is not an accomplishment, but relationships can be an accomplishment. The union that you build and grow with someone can be an accomplishment. And if that's what you want, I say pursue it.
And I really have nothing else to add to what they've said. They like summed it up really well. Thank you for watching this episode. Come back again for another one. Emo Talk Show is your place for all things uncomfortable. You don't like it, we gonna say it. Sure. You love it, we gonna have the conversation. So come back again. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Go ahead and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Yeah, thank you. We love you all. Come back again.